Welcome back. You're watching The Agenda. The Department of Human Settlements is celebrating the provision of 4.7 million houses countrywide since democracy. Minister Nomaindia Mfeketo is today launching 3 social housing projects at Hilltop near Bellair in eThekwini Municipality. Well, the social housing program targeting people who earn between 1,500 rand and 22,000 rand offers rental housing units that are closer to work opportunities. Our reporter Sibongakonke Mbatha has more.
We're still coming to you live from Bellair, where the Department of Human Settlement continues to record a milestone of making sure that housing is being a service that is rendered to people of South Africa, and especially people from the province of KwaZulu-Natal, as we do understand that our province is the second province out of all the provinces that have the most backlog when it comes to housing services delivery as far as housing is concerned. But of course, the crux of the matter, earlier on this morning, Minister Nomaindia Mfeketo, Minister of Human Settlement, did highlight that it is a collective responsibility, especially with regards to making sure that such projects are maintained and sustained, and of course the end goal being 2020 is ultimately achieved. But boiling it down to KwaZulu-Natal, where the official opening of 750 units is happening, it boils down to understanding the process of how everything happens. I have with me MEC for Human Settlement in the province, Mr. Ravi Pillay, who is just going to give us detail as to how do you go about acquiring, let's say I want some housing in this facility, the process for members of the community who might not be aware of how they acquire and be able to be within this bracket of 1.5 and 15,000, the access to such information. And very good morning to you, sir, before we begin.
Good morning to you and good morning to the viewers. This is a social housing project, which means it's a rental project. I think it's important to understand that. It's not rent to buy or rent to own, it's pure rental. As you indicated, it's aimed at the under 15,000 rand income bracket. The projects advertised by the social housing institutions, these projects are not managed directly by government, although we give a significant number of grants for it. They are managed by a social housing institution. In this case, it's First Metro, which is a not-for-profit company, a Section 21 company that has to report to and be accredited by the Social Housing Regulatory Authority. So these projects advertised, you go to any First Metro office, you'll be able to apply. It goes through a screening process, your income levels, and then your creditworthiness, unfortunately, is important. But the incomes, the rentals are effectively subsidized, because in return for what government gives, the rentals are far lower than what it would normally be in the private sector. So your rentals could be as low as 750 rand to as much as 4,000 rand for those who are earning 15,000 rand a month. Of course, if you look at the units, if you had to open a newspaper and see what kind of rentals they're being advertised at, I think it'll be nothing less than 5,000 rand for a unit like this. So it's intended to have a cross-subsidizing effect. So once the screening process is completed, there are other criteria, of course, fair demographic representation, and you mustn't have benefit. You can't be sitting with an RDP house somewhere else and then come and rent this particular unit. So those criteria are gone through. Of course, this particular block that we are in now is 240 units out of a total of 850 in the 3 projects that we are doing collectively here. We are closing on to the 4,000 unit mark in KwaZulu-Natal as far as social housing is concerned. We must make the appeal for people to observe the discipline of rental payment, because up to 30 to 35% of the cost of this project is borrowed money. Those are loans that have to be repaid together with interest at commercial rates. So if people don't pay the rental, the system will collapse, and we don't want that to happen, and therefore there has to be rental enforcement and the legal procedures with the lease agreements that are signed. Of course, rental stock is just one instrument. Yes, as you indicated earlier on, we have the second biggest backlog, but we are the second biggest province in terms of population after Gauteng. I think we would have a higher level of poverty than Gauteng. We would have a higher rural component than Gauteng. But we're still averaging about 25,000 houses a year for the last 7 years, which has been the highest in the country, and we're quite proud of that record. But that doesn't help those who are still waiting, and we only can say that their turn will come. Of course, we're looking at different instruments. We have the rural housing, which has been very successful and intensive, although there's still a huge backlog. We have mega projects like Konubia in Mshlanga, Phoenix area. And then we have Vulindlela, which is closing on to the 22,000 unit mark at the moment. So those are the mega projects. We have medium-sized projects like Kingsborough West or Groudville in Stanger throughout the province. And we're still struggling to get the banks to come in more strongly to cater for the gap market, but there are encouraging signs as far as that is concerned. Of course, we have huge informal settlements, and I think it's important to understand that, especially in eThekwini. I think our informal settlements in the rest of the province will be able to manage it systematically. But eThekwini has a particularly high rate of migration or urbanization. Research indicates that by the year 2030, there will be another 7 to 8 million people in our cities in the country as a whole. For eThekwini, that's another 1 million people in just 12 years' time. And there's already, you've seen the kind of migration that there has been. So we're coming with a very strong service sites program. I meet many people in informal settlements who are working, and they say, MEC, we understand you can't build houses for everyone at the same time, but give us a piece of land, we'll make a plan. And so that's what the service sites program is aimed at. Of course, we'll have to even look at planned informal settlements, where, as the Minister indicated in the earlier interview, okay, here's land, and have an organized informal settlement while people waiting for higher level of services. Of course, eThekwini has a very, very strong best practice interim services program. That's in respect to water, electricity, sanitation. We want to even do footpaths and public lighting. So even though you're staying in an informal settlement, we can systematically make your environment and life better. Of course, what's giving us the challenge is the new invasions. And really there's a lot of opportunism there. We've done research which indicates that 20% of those who are living in informal settlements are paying rent to somebody. Another 40% paid for the site on which they built their shack. And that's not land that belonged to the people. So there is an economic cycle that's driving this, and that we have to contain and manage and be firm about. But for those who are in genuine need and approach their councillors and understand the programs that are in place, I'm sure we're going to systematically address this. Of course, master spatial planning is important to plan for this migration, and that's work that is in progress.
MEC, speaking of invasions, you touch on a very important talking point as far as rented establishments are concerned. Even RDPs, we see such happening, where there seems to be suspected political influence to it, attached to it rather, where you find that people allegedly get into these rented outlets or RDPs due to political association. We find invasions happening in some of these rented outlets in different parts of our province. We find in Pietermaritzburg the suspicions of also political invasion. How do we address that? It seems to be one of the main challenges that are curbing this plan.
You're absolutely correct. In the Pietermaritzburg case, the Alo's Ridge program is run by the SHI in Pietermaritzburg, called Capital City Housing. That was invaded by people who alleged to be military veterans. The Capital City Housing has obtained a court order against them already, but we are engaging because we want to talk to people. We've had 2 meetings with military veterans already. I think it's important to go a bit into the history of this, that originally military veterans did not want to accept the normal 40 square meter houses. They said they made a special contribution to the history of our country, which is true, and therefore they deserve something better. That then got the process stuck into an engagement with the Department of Military Veterans, where they've finally agreed after a long period of engagement as to what the top-up would be, what the additional specifications would be, and it's an additional 10 square meters, it's a 50 square meters with fencing, with paving, with carports, and higher spec inside the house. That project is being implemented. There are issues there. With regard to this invasion, we've already started profiling them, and while I don't want to deal with it in the public, but the truth is not all of them are on the military database. There's allegations that some of those units are being rented out to others, and these we want to engage with and deal with in a firm way. But what we do have agreement with is that they now will accept the 40 square meters, normal B and G house. If we had that agreement 3-4 years ago, we would have been able to accommodate them in all the projects that we have, and we've now agreed in principle that the projects that we have, we will offer them a certain percentage to be able to accommodate them. In addition, they have their own dedicated military housing project. With that project, 100 million rand has been set aside. It's with Itala. They wanted to do it themselves as a people's housing process. There's a company which is made up of military veterans on Point, is it Point Above rather? Point Above Engineering, mustn't confuse the two. Point Above Engineering, which is been contracted to deliver, and the one practical obstacle at the moment is the availability of service sites to do that. Msunduzi, in this particular case, has made land available. Unfortunately, there are milestones in land processing that must be complied with. So we are going to continue the engagement. We have a series of meetings with the military veterans, the municipality, and Capital City Housing to try to package a final solution to that one. But we want to give a firm message generally. It simply undermines the whole housing delivery process, and unfortunately the opportunists that are there discredit whatever legitimate reasons people may have.
Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Pleasure.
That was, of course, MEC for Human Settlement in the province, basically just highlighting how invasion continued to compromise the housing projects led by, of course, government. And, of course, it did give us detail as to who qualifies and how can they be able to access these rentals.